we are a theme park channel, and as a theme park channel, we have to cover one of the biggest settlements that the theme park world has ever seen. Hell, it's one of the biggest settlements that we've ever seen from corporate America. This one is really, really big, folks. Here you go. Let me go ahead and put it on screen right now. From That Park Place, Disney loses major lawsuit. Judge awards class action largest wage theft settlement in California history. This by Marvin Montanero, September 17th, 2025. In what has been described as the largest wage theft settlement in California history, a judge in Orange County has signed off on a massive payout to tens of thousands of Disneyland employees. The ruling closes a long-running Disney lawsuit that centered on the company's refusal to comply with Anaheim's voter-approved living wage ordinance. The roots of this case trace back to Measure L, a living wage law approved by Anaheim voters in 2018. The ordinance required hospitality businesses in the Anaheim Resort District that received city subsidies to pay workers a minimum of $15 per hour beginning January 1st, 2019, with annual increases. Measure L culture is extremely important. Do you know why Measure L is very important to this case?
Why, Vash? Why?
Well, going beyond what Marvin has beautifully included in his article, I want to go ahead and take you back to early 2018, or at least earlier that year, because you'll remember, culture, that Disney was attempting to build a fourth hotel for the Disneyland Resort. Do you remember that whole thing right there?
Yes. Yeah. They wanted to build like a diamond level hotel with super fanciness and blue glass everywhere. I was excited. Sapphire and a sapphire in the rough in the midst of an orange grove. It was going to be amazing.
I forgot the diamond language right there that they used for this. But if you guys don't know, here you go. Here's some of the concept art that they released for this diamond hotel right here. And this was going to be placed between Disneyland Hotel and basically downtown Disney proper. It was going to take up a large expanse right there. And one of the reasons why a lot of those facilities, like the AMC Theater that used to exist there, the Rainforest Cafe, the ESPN Zone, and so much more, were left vacant for years practically until just recently, where they are deciding to rejuvenize that area of downtown Disney from their poor mistakes. Now, the reason why that never came to fruition is because the city, who was granting subsidies to anybody who was looking to establish a new hotel in this area, well, when Disney applied to build this hotel, it was originally in a different place. In fact, 100 feet from where they were attempting to build it, at least with this concept art already posted. And when they went to update that filing, they said, "Oh, we're not going to go ahead and give you that subsidy, actually, because it wasn't meant for you." Then this began a long war between the city and Disney. And one of the reasons why they were going to deny this subsidy is because Disney wanted to preempt taxes on tickets. And one of the reasons why they were going to lock themselves at 30 years. Anyway, it was a whole big mess. Well, the LA Times in 2018 wrote this article. Anaheim officially puts an end to tax breaks for Disneyland Resort. I'm going to go ahead and read you the first paragraph right here, and then I can't show you anymore. The Anaheim City Council voted Tuesday to end agreements that offer the Disneyland Resort tax breaks for investing in its theme parks and an adjacent shopping district, a move requested by theme park owner Walt Disney Company. The Walt Disney Company said, well, let's go ahead and end subsidies. It just indefinitely. All the stuff that we were getting from the city, let's just put that away right there. Mayor Tom Tate said that he was very surprised by Disney's request, but that he was optimistic that the move will be a, quote, rare opportunity to push the reset button with the city's largest employer. Now, culture, you might remember this. Do you know who actually made the move to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and end subsidies with the city?
Was it Bob?
No.
Was
Disneyland president Josh D'Amaro requested that the city end agreements in a letter to Anaheim officials last week, saying the deals have, quote, created an adversarial climate where there should be cooperation and goodwill.
That was before the global crisis, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, this is 2018, yes.
They were living the high life at that time, and the mass CEO exodus across all companies had just started to begin, if I remember correctly.
D'Amaro may have been referring to the election in the last 2 years of city council members who have increasingly questioned the subsidies, incentives, rebates, and protections from future taxes awarded by Anaheim over the last 2 decades. Indeed they were. But now we come back to this settlement and what it has to do at all with this. Well, remember Measure L and its significance. Adopted by Anaheim voters in 2018, Measure L is part of the Anaheim Municipal Code and requires Anaheim Resort employers that receive a city tax rebate to pay a minimum wage to employees. And this measure was passed overwhelmingly 45,000 to 38,000, 54% to 45% of the city voting for this. Did you catch that, guys? Josh Diamaro said, let's go ahead and end tax subsidies. We don't, you know what? Let's go ahead and press the reset button on all of this. When they knew Measure L was coming to a vote. Yes, they were trying to get out of paying their employees more by dropping subsidies with the city. And who was that? The head of that? Well, Mr. Josh Diamaro himself. And unfortunately, Bob Iger was so impressed by his performance that, well, he's now in the driver's seat to become the next CEO, much of which based on his performance in Anaheim, pressing the reset button when it comes to relations with the city. Anyway, that's the background there on Measure L. Disney initially argued that it was not bound by Measure L. Yes, because they had already dropped their tax subsidies with the city, claiming it did not receive the kind of subsidies that triggered the law. Yes, because they were trying to preempt all of this, you see. And initially, a trial court originally sided with the company, but that decision was later overturned by the California Court of Appeal, which ruled that Disney's bond and tax-related deals with the city counted as subsidies under the ordinance. You see, they weren't going to skirt away from that. You accepted subsidies for decades, and it's like you dropped them in the final hour and said, "Oh, we don't qualify for under that Measure L." I mean, there.
Come on, that's just excellent lawyering, right? That's being a good theme park warrior.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And hey, the Court of Appeals said, no, you're not getting out of this. This affected this measure. It absolutely includes you because you've just taken advantage of the city for so long. Some parts of it actually very good for the city, some parts bad. The California Supreme Court declined to hear further appeals, leaving Disney with little choice but to settle. The result, a staggering $233 million agreement benefiting roughly 50,000 current and former cast members. Current and former, 50,000. Remember, culture, the cast member count at Disneyland Resort right now is, I think, around 30,000. So this is 20,000 additional people that will be receiving roughly $3,000 per person. Yeah,
probably since they were initiating this, working on this agreement. And that's the other problem Disney has had recently. And look, I'm gonna call balls and strikes on this. I'm gonna say Disney has had a lot of run through. The cast members that you may have used to see, especially at Disneyland regularly. Yeah. No, they've moved a lot of those people on if they could. There's a lot of lack of institutional memory everywhere, including in any kind of cast service job. So I've been very disappointed. Obviously, I was behind these people for getting a little bit more money in their pocket. The fact that cast members were still living in their cars was a massive issue. And you had the only useful thing that the crazy Disney lady has ever done is to be on board with this. Otherwise, she's not exactly, great for Disney in a lot of different ways.
I'll say this. My position on this has shifted over time because I think initially when, this all goes back almost a decade now, in which you have cast members pleading with Disney in order to raise wages and to protest, strike, and all of that in order to get that accomplished. Initially it was like, not sure. I'm not sure if an entry-level job like many of the employment roles at Disney provide, right? I'm not sure if that entry-level position should mandate an excessively high price tag attached to it. However, with the inflation rate in California especially, I mean, Disney would have been far better to kind of even go a little bit higher than what Measure L actually called for. Measure L, actually, if we break this down right here, let me see if I have it. Yeah, $15 on or after January 1st, 2019, $16 on or after January 1st, 2020, $17, 2021, and $18, 2022. So they just for PR purposes alone, they probably should have paid just a little bit more. But culture, maybe you have different thoughts than I do.
Well, my thoughts have always been that the cast members had become the people of they've suffered. They'd been suffering for a long time. A lot of that is Disney's operational greed. which is quite high. I've held that opinion for a while, especially even in Florida. I think that their occupational support is very low, and that extends basically to all park level employees. The people that wear the suits, the ties, and occasionally will pretend to pick up some garbage here and there. You're lucky if they ever venture out of Burbank to get over here. Same thing in Florida. I always felt like the people were underpaid. They were delivering at a high level, but there weren't enough of them. In fact, that problem has only been exacerbated multiple times. And so, again, if you talk to ride leads and ride operators and area people, they're all going to give you kind of like, well, we don't make enough money. It's hard to make ends meet. It's not until you get to the manager level that things seem to thin out a little bit as far as the desperation that's there. And that happens in Florida too. I mean, the number of people that I knew that were in the various areas, they would stack on top of each other in their apartments. So you had 3-bedroom apartments with 6 to 9 people in them. That's how desperate it can get to be able to kind of group up, get a halfway decent place that has surrounded with some amenities that might make it a little bit easier, despite the fact that you're surrounded by human bodies, whether you're at the park or even at your apartment. So I've always felt that way. So.
And let's not forget that Disney has done some things in order to get around, paying employees more. For example, one of the reasons why they implemented the changes to the Disney look, basically abolishing it outright, was because they were looking at a massive labor shortage after the reopenings occurring in both 2020 and 2021, right? You remember that time period where, you had a lot of stimulus checks out there. A lot of people weren't actually getting into the labor market. And so in order to prevent them from having to raise wages considerably in order to get talent in, they decided to reduce their standards. And that's kind of what we've seen from them there. Media outlets, including the Los Angeles Times, Voice of OC, and Walt Disney World News Today, note that with about 50,000 workers included, the math works out to an estimated $3,000 average payout per employee. But that figure is only a rough average. The actual amount will depend on each worker's circumstances, how many hours they logged, their position, and what overtime or benefits they were owed. Some may receive more than that estimate, while others may receive less. That being said, though, a $33 million payout is absolutely massive. It is huge. It is big time right there. That's, talking about $250 million going to basically back pay because of this settlement right here. I do believe that's there's some interest attached there, so that number may actually grow if I'm not mistaken, but we'll have to see. Anyway, this was a big case right here, big story, and we wanted to go ahead and bring it to you. Please comment down below on what you think of this particular story.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.